everybody? Ty here. Hope everyone is doing well. Trying to get ahead of the game here. I got some resources back, which we'll see in a little bit, which will hopefully allow us to put up our videos a little bit earlier in the day. I know not everyone's into a 9 o'clock video. But that being said, though, we're going to actually cover the lower 48 today because we finally have some interesting signals to talk about here. They've been kind of few and far in between, so we've almost, in a way, kind of avoided talking about it. Just kind of beating a dead horse, so to speak, for lack of a better term, in regards to the weather over here. Outside of some showers and thunderstorms like what we're seeing right now over here towards southeast in Florida and over towards the monsoon area around the southwest, not really a whole lot to talk about. Winter weather is at a minimal right now during this time of year, especially with the way the weather pattern has been set up, where we've had a little bit more in the way of warmer air kind of dominating across the lower 48 as it is. So I would also expect that trend to continue, at least in the short term. But there are signs of change here. Obviously, no threats of severe weather in the short term. But if we go on to this 6 to 8 day outlook here in particular, or the 6 to 8 day range, you can see that predictability too low tags start to pop up here, which is really the most notable signal that I've seen in a little while here. Now, obviously, this is nothing to hype up or anything like that, but the signal becomes a little bit more interesting once we start to look at the model data here. So obviously you can see we got pivotal weather back. Very happy to have that up and running again. But we're going to look at the GFS. We have the Euro in the bottom left corner of the screen. This is particularly a thing for my OG viewers who have been here a while. But if we move both of these models here, there's two features that we're looking out for. One, we have a coastal low that pops up towards the end of the week, and I'm going to pause it here actually for both of these. So it's right around the 120 to 126 hour time frame. Now, it's a tale of two models with this, and this has been kind of going back and forth. Some have had this dropping a little bit further towards the Carolinas. Now we're kind of meandering a little bit more towards the mid-Atlantic and northeastern coast here. With the lack of cold air in play, I would not expect much in the way of wintry precipitation. But with this coastal storm, we're going to see an increase in rainfall, and of course also a chance for maybe some increased surf and also some flooding. The predominant flow of wind, though, should keep most of the worst of the waves offshore at this point. But the wind and rain, it's going to make for what is likely to be a messy Sunday and into Monday based off of how things are going with this. The Euro scenario definitely seems to have this as a much stronger area of low pressure as we get towards the weekend and into the week. But of course, this is about a scan ahead here. But even so, the signal looks a little bit more profound on the Euro than it does the GFS. And then, of course, there's other models that we could look at here, but that turns into a hour-long video really quickly, so I'm going to try to avoid doing that here. But if I were to compare this to, let's say, maybe the icon, I'm going to sneak and do this really quickly if I can even find it. There it is. The newest icon's just coming, and we're just barely within range here. Notice the icon's pretty well wrapped up with this as well. However, this is a little bit further towards the south, a little bit further south than what the Euro is. But in either scenario here, it does look like we have an increased threat of increased rainfall and also a heightened wind here. The real question at this point is going to be just where does this end up going? If it goes a little further towards the south, I would expect impacts to be more so towards the mid-Atlantic and maybe emitting more parts of the northeast or the New England region here. But if it goes further towards the north, New England, maybe even the Maine coastline could be the point of interest here. Of course, the GFS kind of favors that scenario the most out of all the models that I've seen right now. Still have ensemble guidance that we've been looking at as well, so we're still trying to figure out what exactly to make of this system here, should it really manifest into what we're seeing now. So let's keep things rolling, and we'll actually take a look at the weather pattern beyond that point. Notice that after that storm leaves, we have a big ridge that sets up somewhere either between the southern plains and deep south here. And then from that point, especially with the GFS, we see multiple troughs beginning to come into play. Some of these look pretty stout, and as a result, we end up possibly seeing the potential for severe weather coming back into the equation, and maybe even some notable storm systems here. This is the first notable trough that I see, and then really starts to ramp up by the time we get towards midweek next week. So I'm intrigued to see how this scenario plays out, especially if we end up getting the GFS. The GFS scenario really favors more of the Midwestern states, especially along the Mississippi River and the northern parts of that basin, particularly for maybe some severe weather potential. Those troughs are looking pretty impressive at this point. We also can't rule out maybe the Ohio Valley being introduced to the equation as well as we get towards the middle part of the month. Now, obviously, if we compare this to the Euro, it's a slightly different scenario here, but nonetheless, it's something else that we're going to have to keep an extra close eye. And you see the first trough kind of coming in here, and the second trough is probably going to be the most impressive one. I do think that this brings mountain snow over towards the northwestern states, but as time goes on, things get a little bit more zonal, a little bit quicker with the Euro versus the GFS. So I'm most interested in seeing, out of the two models, which scenario will play out, because usually we end up either seeing one or the other. Sometimes they'll just trend a completely different direction here, but based off the consistency that I have seen, I think we were kind of leaning towards GFS yesterday. Now we're kind of going a different way today. GFS has remained pretty consistent, though, I would say, as of right now. So I'd still say at this point it's too early to tell just what exactly we will get here. But it does look like we're going to see some sort of ramp up in activity as a whole. And I mean, if we were to look at the lower levels of the atmosphere here to go along with it, it shouldn't really be to anyone's surprise that we end up seeing an increase in activity from both of these models. If I can get them to loop here, and I'm hoping that I can, and it looks like I can't. So this is the problem that I was having before. There we go. I think I got it working now. Nope. But either way, what we're going to be looking for on here, and we're just going to do this manually at this point. So even though you're seeing this recorded here, this is me making adjustments real time. What I want you to really focus on, especially as we get towards the 200-hour mark, are just the increase in short waves that pop up here. If you're wondering what a short wave is, these little contour lines on the screen here in conjunction with the jet stream. So short waves and short wave trough to go along with it. So it's a typical fall time severe weather setup potentially coming into play, at least just based off of the wind pattern. During this time of year, we tend to get more shear coming back into play. It's kind of a little bit more like spring. That's why we often call fall the second season. Really, I think the biggest limiting factors, which is pretty common for this time of year, really kind of revolves around the lack of instability, sometimes moisture coming into play, which we'll be looking at in just a moment here. But as you can see with the Euro, those short waves aren't quite as prominent, and that's a big thing due to the fact that those short waves help generate lift, and that's always important when it comes to your severe weather. So let's go ahead now and actually shift over to the GFS. We're going to have both versions of the GFS on here. We have the temperature on the main part of the screen with our dew points on the other end of the screen as well. So we're going to move both of these. And really the main thing that we're going to be looking at in particular is the warm nose that's going to pop up over here. Obviously, nothing major is going to be changing in the short term in regards to our temperatures. We're still expected to be well above average across the board, but I do see those 80s and 90s starting to push their way even into the mid-Atlantic here, also the Midwest as well. And what intrigues me with that look there is usually out of a strong frontal boundary or a trough here, we'll start to see an increase in temperatures out ahead of it. And keep in mind, I said this would be occurring towards mid-month. This signal does kind of coincide with this pretty well. So again, it's another check on the box here in regards to our severe potential. Now, time frame for the dew points here is a little bit different. I kind of messed it up just a bit, so we're kind of going back and forth with the loop here. But if we can get the timing right, what you'll be looking for is this little area of blue. These are 60-degree dew points starting to come into play here. if we get this nice push off to the north, which definitely looks like it's starting to show up here, that might be a little bit more of a stout signal for maybe increasing severe weather down the line. So at least from the GFS perspective, which I mean really if we're looking based off of that troughing alone, that should tell us all that we need to know. But if we also go ahead and take a look at the euro, we're trying to get as much data as we can here at this point. I really want to make sure that we're really crossing our T's and dotting our I's. No pun intended, because my name has both those letters in them. But the fact of the matter is, in a cohesion with the trough here, if we are able to get that plume of moisture, which definitely looks like it's still there, even though the troughing isn't quite as prominent with this, I think even with the euro scenario, we would still have enough ingredients there, or enough sufficient ingredients for severe weather to be possible. Now with the weaker troughing, this is also going to mean that the temperatures would be cooler in this scenario. So, like I said, with the tail of these two models here, very different outcomes we would end up getting here. I'm pretty sure a lot of us would more or less favor the euro scenario unless you're a storm chaser and you're looking for some action, because this summer has been a little bit on the slower end, especially the back end. So I guess pick your poison here. Just let me know in the comments which team you're on. Are you on Team Euro or are you on Team GFS with this scenario here? I'm interested to see if you guys respond, just what your thoughts are on the matter. So last but not least here, we're not going to get too in depth with this one in regards to the dynamics for a storm system that's way too far out of range to really get excited about just yet. But it's at least worth talking about, I should say. But I'm not going to get too far in depth. If you do want to see that, we'll probably make a follow-up video tomorrow again. Let me know in the comments what you want. But that being said, let's go ahead now and take a look at how this pans out on our moisture maps here. Looking at our precipitation, obviously these next few days, not going to be a whole lot of action. Some mountain snow looks like it does come into play for both the GFS and the euro. Here's our coastal storm. As once that leaves, this is when things start to get a little bit more interesting here. I'm expecting more of a linear mode to pop up here, which we end up pretty much seeing it verify on the GFS. We look on the euro, we're seeing a little bit more of a sloppier mode kind of pop up after this coastal storm leaves. Like I said, this is going to bring plenty of precipitation over towards the northeast in particular, also the mid-Atlantic. But if we end up seeing scenarios like the icon play out, that throws all of that out the window. Now, again, like I said, with the euro, pretty messy mode here in general as well in regards to our precipitation here. But as we continue to go on here, one other thing that I would like to bring up also is that monsoon region that we talked about at the beginning of the video still looks like it's going to remain active, as we have a tropical depression that is set to push a little bit more moisture into the region here, and also maybe aid in some mountain snow as well. Both the GFS and Euro scenarios kind of favor that continuing to occur here. It's been consistent with some of the other model runs that we've seen here. Now, I wouldn't really be concerned in regards to any sort of tropical impacts. This storm is going to dissipate well before it would get inland here, but you will be receiving the moisture from it. So rain is ahead here, maybe some mountain snow if you're up in the higher elevations, especially with these other troughs coming in, especially if you're looking at the GFS scenario, either way. But with all of that in mind, we're going to call this one a video for now. If you want a little bit more in-depth video, definitely let me know in the comments if there's any other parameters that you want to look at in particular. Definitely open to that. Again, comments. But anyways, I'm going to call this one a video here, and we'll be gearing up for whatever is next. Everyone take care, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you soon.